Hi guys! I was actually going to do a ranking of my eyeshadow palettes, my favourite eyeshadow palettes to my worst eyeshadow palettes. And whenever I was going through my palettes, I realised that I don't actually have any palettes in my collection that I don't really like, or I don't like, because over the past year since we've moved into this house, I have majorly decluttered and I have continued to declutter my makeup collection every other week, every month. So as soon as I have an eyeshadow palette that I didn't like or don't like, I just got rid of it straight away. So we're literally just going to be talking about my favourite eyeshadow palettes. I was also going to rank them, but that was too hard. That was too hard. You're obviously going to know my favourites, right, when I talk about them. The enthusiasm will come through, I'm sure. So starting off strong, Morphe. And do you know what? I've mentioned this before, but I feel like with Morphe as a brand and their eyeshadows, they stay consistent. I kind of feel like with their formula, the formulation of their eyeshadows, it hasn't changed. And the quality especially has not changed with their eyeshadow palettes. I love that. I do, however, feel like with the whole downfall with Morphe has something, and maybe a lot, to do with the fact that they got too heavily involved and associated themselves too much with problematic people. These are literally the only palettes that I actually have in my collection of Morphe, so I thought I would actually show you them all. So I have these two big palettes here. These are obviously the type palettes that Morphe was known for like years ago, back in the day. So I have here the 35XO palette from Morphe, and I can't remember how old this is, but it's just a palette that I'll never get rid of because it's absolutely stunning. It is the most aesthetically pleasing palette to look at. I feel like it is absolutely beautiful. It's a very cohesive palette in the fact that all the shadows, they all go with each other. Like, there is numerous looks that you're going to be able to create with this palette. However, because of like the colour story of the palette is pinks, mauves, nice kind of colours, burgundies, a couple of purples in there, you're only going to be able to use only certain shadows, if that makes sense, but they're still so cohesive, and it is an absolutely stunning palette, mixture of mattes and shimmers. This wee pop of shimmer in the centre here is a pressed glitter. Like, it's just beautiful. It's an absolutely stunning palette. You can do something very soft glam with this and just really, really pretty. And of course, the quality and the formulation of the palette is nice as well. And just before I get on to the next one, I know this is going to be a pain in the ass, but I'm not going to swatch every single palette, mainly due to the fact that I don't want to. I'll swatch the odd palette, but not all of them. This is the 35A Up Until Dawn Artistry palette. Again, it's an absolutely beautiful palette, but I will say, whenever I got this in PR, I opened this palette and I was kind of like, will I give it away? Will I just keep it for shits and giggles? I didn't know what to do with it because it just didn't tickle me where I wanted to be tickled until I done an eyeshadow look with it. I done a full tutorial dedicated to this palette and I've kept it ever since, and I've used it a couple of times since off camera. I'll actually put in a wee picture here of the makeup tutorial that I did with it. So it just kind of depends. Like, if you're somebody that's able to look at a palette and just instantly be inspired, that's brilliant, love that. I get that as well with some palettes, but some palettes straight away you don't get there. You have to actually play with the colours, see what they look like on the eyes, and love it. And as you can see, it's more of a colourful palette. We have a couple of rows of pinks, greens, we have like a really dark like midnight blue, but we also have our share of like neutral shades and tones as well to kind of keep it more wearable. And then I have these wee palettes here. I'm just gonna dabble through these quickly. These were recently just sent to me. I've done a couple of tutorials with these. This is the 18WT Matte Essentials palette. As you can see, it's just a neutral palette. How many neutral palettes do we have, right? But if you're on the hunt for a new one, it's a great palette because you're going to have like every shade of neutral that you're going to need. No matter what your skin tone as well, you're going to find a transition that is going to complement your skin tone nicely and create a really nice neutral matte smoky eye or soft glam type of eye. Now this one on the other hand is stunning. This is probably my favourite actually because, I don't know, cool tones. I feel like cool tones are definitely really in the past maybe year and a half, and I love them. So this is the 18CT Matte Essentials palette, and of course, just like the previous one there, it's a full matte palette with cool tones, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, and honestly nothing does compare to the quality of these palettes in terms of like their pigmentation, how they blend out, how they blend together. They blend seamlessly, they're buttery, they blend up together. And what I mean by that is sometimes whenever you use a matte shadow and it's not the best quality and you go in with another matte shadow maybe on top of it, it'll maybe kick up or it'll lift up or it'll go a wee bit patchy. All these shadows blend beautifully together and they're so good. And again, both palettes are really like cohesive. Like all the shadows actually go with each other. Like no shadow looks kind of out of place, if that makes sense. And then I actually bought this myself because it was nice. A Vava Bloom palette. I also bought the smaller palette as well, but I think I actually gave it away or sold it or something. But again, it's very pretty. I'll give these a wee close up. So what I like to do also with some palettes is, how am I gonna do this? You see the way it's an 18 pan palette, I think. So if I just hide one side, you can see that's like a really pretty 9 pan palette, right? Stunning. And then if I hide that side, again, you have a really pretty 9 pan palette. And it's also how I like to create eyeshadow looks as well. So for an example, I'll look at this wee quad here, or this wee corner of shadows. Like how pretty would this not be as an eyeshadow look? And then we also have a couple of pops of pink as well. It's just lovely. So I had to give this wee palette a bit of an honourable mention. So this is the Laura Pro The Artistry Book Chapter 2 palette. There's obviously a Chapter 1 that's over there. It's not as good. Do you know what? Yeah, they are just as good, but there's a lot of similarities in them. However, this one here, of course, I love it even more because it has a load of pressed glitters in it. I feel like if you're a beginner in makeup or you're maybe just starting off in makeup, this is a great palette to have because do you know what? It's actually really affordable. And obviously because of the colour story and the array of shades and tones and colours within this palette. It's got everything you need. It has like a row and a strip of green and blue tones, purples, pinks, reds, yellows, oranges. It has like our transitional shades. It has a brown. The only thing it doesn't have is a black, but this brown is relatively dark. Is there shimmer shades? Yeah, there is. So there's obviously like shimmer shades and obviously the pressed glitters. However, one thing I will say is the shimmer shades maybe aren't the best. They're kind of leaning a wee bit more on the metallic side, but they do give like a really nice soft glow and sheen to them. But like the shades themselves are really good. I will swatch a couple of this palette for you. We'll do a red, we'll do a purple. So like for the price of it, it's such a good palette. They're pigmented, they blend together, buttery soft, and they're an absolute dream to work with. And you don't need any glue with these glitters either. Like the adhesive is actually in the pan. But that's them swatched. Aren't they absolutely stunning? And it's one palette like I would definitely recommend. It's a really good starting palette to actually have to maybe practice on yourself, doing makeup looks, doing colourful makeup looks. Oh yeah. You are probably wondering when they were coming. Beauty Bay palettes. I'll start here with this wee small one that I have. So in fact, no, hold on. No, we'll start with the bigger ones before I injure myself trying to think. So yeah, I was just saying there, these two palettes from Beauty Bay, these are relatively new, like a year ago, year and a half ago, a couple years ago. In fact, does it really fucking matter? So we have the Earthy palette, which is a 42 colour palette. Makes me so sad. It's so beautiful. I love greens. And it's just an essential. It is an absolutely essential palette if you are a lover of green tones and shades, because we have cool tone green shades, warm tone green shades, mixture of mattes and shimmers, different dimensions of shimmers and everything. We have some metallic shades, some really highly intensely pigmented like shimmers, and we also have like a couple of like wee cheeky reddy orange shades in there as well, which I don't know why. But we also have like our crease and transitioning shades as well. It's just overall an absolute beautiful palette. I'll swatch a couple for you because I can't not, honestly. So that's the shimmer shades. And that's some of the matte shades swatched as well. Beauty Bay's eyeshadow formula is just absolutely incredible. They're so buttery, they're so buildable, they're so blendable, there's no kickback with them. They are long lasting on the eyes. You've seen me use these palettes how many times in my tutorials. You've seen me actually like play with them, put them to use. You see how they perform, you see how they look on the eyes, you see how they last on the eyes as well. And then we also have the Midnight palette. So this is again an essential palette if you're into those purple and blue shades. I have to say this palette makes me feel some sort of way. And I love it. At the top here we have our purple and lilac tones and shades. We have a mixture of mattes and shimmers, lights to dark, and then obviously down here we have our blues. Lights to darks, mattes to shimmers, and I've obviously swatched a couple of shades for you. Like, look at that. Some of the shadows are just like kind of like a bit of a sheen, like they're a nice like metallic shadow with just like a really nice sheen, whereas you get these shadows here which are more of like an intense shimmer shadow, and they kind of have like that spongy feel, and there's like actual glitter in through it to get that more sparkle look. And if you kind of feel like you're maybe a wee bit intimidated by the size of these palettes, you can go for the £16 palettes or the £9 palettes, because I know that whenever you get maybe a palette this size, you can get a wee bit intimidated and be like, oh my god, like what will I do? You're spoiled for choice, but we all love that, right? But you know, just if you're a beginner, if you're a wee bit older, or you're maybe starting off in makeup, take it slow. And also makeup can sense your fear, so also remember that. But these palettes are fabulous, and they're also fabulous for like travel as well, because they are a wee bit smaller, but you still have the colour story there, the absolute beautiful array of shades and tones. So obviously this is the pink palette. I'll actually maybe put a picture up on the screen here of like the bigger size palette so you can kind of see in comparison, but basically I would say all the best shades out of the bigger palette is maybe just put into this palette. And obviously mattes, shimmers, we have like a nice kind of like subtle dark red, a subtle dark red, that made sense. I don't really know what else to say about this palette that I haven't already said about the other palette. They're just absolutely beautiful palettes. They're so good, and obviously the smaller the palettes, the more affordable they are. And then I have this palette as well. Not too sure whether I want to talk about it, but I'll show you it anyway, because I don't actually know if they still do this palette on the website, but this, oh they do. They still have this palette on the website. Yes! So this is actually £25, but I've actually noticed up here that you can actually get the double fiery duo, where you can get this palette and also a small £16 palette for £29. No brainer, right? But look at this palette. This palette is definitely a warm gal's wet dream. There's also a cool tone palette, by the way, that I haven't got because I don't need it, but this is just beautiful. You have like all the warm tones that you're ever gonna need, and then you also have like those really nice vibrant oranges, and you have like wearable oranges as well. We have a row of like yellows, matte and shimmers, and like mustards, you know, like those beautiful mustard shades, and then we're down into like our reds, dark pinks, burgundies and raspberry shades. We have a couple of mattes and shimmers there as well. We also have like transitional shades throughout, a dark brown, a black. What more do you want? Like, looking at all of these Beauty Bay palettes, they're so aesthetically pleasing to look at. They're freaking stunning. They're absolutely beautiful. I honestly do think that if you're somebody that buys these palettes and you don't like them or you don't get along with them, I will personally give you your money back. And Beauty Bay also has a couple of deals on at the minute, as I was just having a wee nosy there, where you can get 2 of them at a discounted price because they're on sale, or you know, like, go and have a wee nosy. I'll link all of them down below for you in the description box, and just have a nice wee shop. It's payday weekend, treat yourself. Times are tough. Let's talk about some Be Perfect palettes, because we all knew that was coming as well, right? I think you can still get the Ja palette. I'm gonna double check because I'm not gonna waste my time sitting talking here about it if you can't get it. So give me 2 wee ticks. Okay, so as far as I can see, it's not on the Be Perfect Cosmetics website, but you can get this exact palette on Beauty Bay. So do you know what? If I can find it on Be Perfect, I'll link it there. But if it's not on the Be Perfect Cosmetics website, they also have a palette called the Muted eyeshadow palette, and it's basically, this is the exact same. Oh, as you can see, I have hit pan on, oh that's disappointing, only 2 shades. But do you know what I love about this palette? I'll obviously get to the Be Perfect palettes and eyeshadow formula as a whole in a minute, but this palette in particular, the one thing I love about it is I find it very hard, and I think I can speak for quite a lot of people, depending on your skin tone. I sometimes find it very hard to find a transitional shade that works perfect against my skin tone. Whether you're a person of color, you're darker, or you're very, very pale, I think, you know, like, we'll all maybe struggle here and there to find that perfect transition shade, you know, because I find that sometimes with certain transitional shades, they'll lean very, very ashy on me, or they'll look very, very cool tone. It's this shade here, Sandy. This is the perfect transitional shade for me and my skin tone. It just, lovely. And then we also have an absolutely beautiful array of other neutral shades and tones. And what I love about this palette as well, it's so versatile in the fact that you can do anything with it. You know, it's a perfect palette for makeup artists and the everyday person or a makeup enthusiast, because we have everything there. We have our neutrals, we have our shimmers, we have our mattes, we have our colours, but we also have wearable colours. And I'm going to talk about this quite a lot in my Colourpop palettes. I love a palette that comes with wearable colours, wearable pops of colour, because let's all be honest, on a regular Wednesday afternoon, I don't really want to go out to Tesco's or to B&M with bright purple eyeshadow, but sometimes, like a wee kiss or a wee wash of something is just nice. That's just what we're looking for. And we have like a really nice, like subtle lilac shimmer in this palette. I'll give you another wee close up. But what I really feel like what put Be Perfect Cosmetics formula up on their well-deserved pedestal was, of course, the Carnival palettes. These are worldwide palettes. The formula is now worldwide, and I love that for them. Who doesn't have this palette? Who doesn't know about this palette? So good. And also keep in mind, guys, that I have a discount code with Be Perfect Cosmetics. I'll actually leave it here on the screen. It's all capitals, 20 at the end. My second name has 1 M on it. This is exactly it. And that can get you 20% off absolutely everything on the website. And I think at the minute, if you spend over 50 or 60 pounds, you get a free full-sized fake tan. You can still use my discount code. But again, their formula is just fantastic. So I'm actually going to swatch more of like the vibrant shades in this palette just so you can see them. Like, look how intense and beautifully pigmented they are, and they blend like an absolute dream. They blend out beautifully with each other. The amount of looks that you'll be able to create with this palette is probably unlimited. I'm going to swatch a couple more shades for you actually. Even just swatching them, like putting your finger in them, they're just so creamy and just so nice. They're such a nice shadow to work with. There we go. Stunning. Right, Colourpop. This is going to be a while. I'm not going to go through every single eyeshadow palette because I think we'll be here a while. So do you know what one I have at the top here is the Matte About Hue palette. I hate this palette. I hate it. And I don't know why. Have I actually used this? I've used one shade. I've used that colour there. So if you don't mind that, I'll obviously sanitize it, give it a good clean down. Message me on Instagram if you want it, you can have it. You'll just have to pay for shipping because I'm tight. But yeah, message me and you can have it. UK only. Do you know, I don't even know what to say about Colourpop's eyeshadows that I haven't said already. I sometimes feel like with these videos I end up sounding very repetitive. But if I was to recommend any eyeshadows to anybody, no matter what age you are, where you come from, I don't care, I would definitely say Colourpop. If you haven't tried Colourpop's eyeshadows before, you have to. Just go onto their website and have a look through their eyeshadow palettes. So I've actually lifted out the majority of my Colourpop eyeshadow palettes, and I'm just going to show you them. So this is the That's Taupe palette. They have a shit ton of these like 9-pan palettes, whatever colour story or theme you can think of as a human being, to how far as your brain will stretch to, they have a colour story. I'm not joking. The Winx Club palette, it's more of like a pastel toned palette. In the Springs palette, absolutely beautiful, stunning. Limoncello, yeah, so this is the Limoncello palette, beautiful. Malibu Barbie, and all of this collection is still available, by the way, the Barbie one. This is the Sweet Talk palette. How pretty, like how cute is that palette? And then this palette here is this palette is always out of stock. I think this is actually like their #1 selling palette, or it was at a stage, because they had something on the website, and like with this palette, I can't remember what it said, but yeah. But this is the Good as Gold palette. It was like a favourite or something. A couple of transition shades, a couple of dark browns, a black, a couple of shimmers. We have a pressed glitter in here. We have a couple of different textures of shimmers in here as well. We have a couple of shimmers that are more kind of like gritty and like, you know, that pressed glitter, and then more spongy feeling, and then ones that are just a really nice like velvety metallic soft glam type of look, or give a nice wee glow to the eye that just kind of catches the light. If you don't want to commit to buying like one of the bigger mega palettes, this one here is absolutely stunning, and especially with this colour story. The mega palettes especially are just phenomenal. Like the quality, like, oh, I don't even know what to say. Like the quality of these palettes is just so good. Like the mattes are just phenomenal. They're just that really nice velvety, buttery, buildable, blendable, perfect formula, and they're just amazing. Like even with some of the shades being like quite pale, they're still pigmented enough that they just show up beautifully on the lids. Maybe depending on your skin tone. I obviously can only speak for myself, unfortunately. These two are definitely like two palettes I would highly recommend. If you're somebody that doesn't really like any types of colour, whatever, like this is just like the most perfect warm toned neutral palette. You're going to have like every single shade of neutral tone that you're going to want, and obviously it just goes gradual into like your darker shades. And then we have a black as well, and that goes for the Stone Cold Fox palette as well. This palette is so freaking good. God damn it, it's so good. I think it's because cool tones at the minute are just, they're making me feel some sort of way, and I'm loving it. I'm loving every minute of it. It's just absolutely fantastic. It is so good. Like honestly, these shades are so wearable, and they're so freaking complimentary. I kind of feel like no matter what your eye color, what your skin tone, these shades, like cool tones especially, are just so complimentary on everybody. At this point, we're just kind of really looking at the colors and the shades of the palette, because I think we've skimmed over like the quality and the formulation of Colourpop's eyeshadows. They can do no wrong. They are so good. Cannot fault them in any way at all. I'll actually link this as well down below for you. If you had the Kathleen Light So Jaded palette and you loved it, you can obviously no longer get that anymore. This is very similar. There's a couple of obviously like wee tweaks and everything, but there's a couple of wee pops of colours in here that are very similar to what was in the So Jaded palette by Kathleen Lights. But this palette just like the colours, like especially like these colours here, how stunning is this palette, especially with the pops of shimmer and the pops of like pressed glitters and everything. Like this shade here is actually just like a wee shimmer, or it's actually a matte, sorry. It's basically like a matte formula or a matte shadow with glitter actually in it. But look at that. I'm going to swatch it for you. Look at that. Isn't that freaking beautiful? Could you imagine that all over the eyes with just like a really nice blue smoky eye, or like dark teal smoky eye with that like all over the lid? Oh, honestly, just slap me up and down with this shade, seriously. And it's just, it's a stunning palette. Look at it again, look at it. It's just beautiful. And there's even a duochrome in it. This is like a duochrome. So I will try and like link most of these palettes, if not like them all, down below for you guys. My battery is actually flashing at me, so that's why I'm wrapping this up. But that's actually all the palettes that I wanted to talk about anyway, so that was good. Good timing. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Happy Friday. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, guys, and I'll see you in my next one.